Snow pressed against the windows of the old way station like a living thing, piling high and white, swallowing the road and the world beyond it. Inside, the fire burned low, crackling softly, its warmth struggling against the December cold. The silent cowboy sat alone at the far bench, broad shoulders hunched, hat pulled low, gloved hands wrapped around a chipped mug that had long gone cold. He had not spoken to anyone in years, not since the winter he lost everything. The way station was just a stop, a place to wait out storms and time itself, and that was all he wanted. Then the door creaked open, letting in a blade of wind and a child no older than 6. Her red coat too thin, her shoes soaked through, her blonde hair tangled and dusted with snow. She stood there like she wasn't sure she belonged anywhere at all. The station master rushed forward, but before he could speak, the girl's eyes locked onto the cowboy. Something about him, maybe the silence, maybe the sadness, felt safe. She walked straight to him, small boots thudding on the wooden floor, and stopped at his knees. He looked down, startled, as if he'd forgotten children still existed. Her hands were shaking, clutching a folded piece of paper, edges worn soft. "Mister," she said, her voice quiet but steady, "are you Santa's helper?" A few travelers chuckled nervously. The cowboy didn't answer. He hadn't answered anyone in a long time. The girl didn't seem bothered. She unfolded the paper and held it up. It was a letter written in uneven crayon. "I already asked Santa," she said, but he didn't write back. "So, I thought maybe you could listen." The cowboy swallowed hard. Something in his chest tightened. He nodded once. That was all he could manage. The girl smiled like that was all she needed. "My name's Ellie," she said. "I don't want toys this year. I don't want candy or a bike. I only want a dad for Christmas." The words hit him harder than any fist ever had. The station went silent. The fire popped. Ellie went on, her voice brave but cracking. She told him about her mama, how she'd gotten sick last winter and gone to heaven when the snow came again. She told him about the foster homes that smelled like strangers and the way people looked past her like she was already gone. She said Christmas was coming and everyone else had someone, and she just wanted one person who would stay. The cowboy's hands trembled. Memories he'd buried clawed their way up. His wife's laugh. His unborn son the night the river froze and took them both. He had decided then he was done with love, done with hope. Ellie finished and waited. The silence stretched. Finally, the cowboy spoke. His voice rough, unused, like gravel dragged across ice. "I ain't what you're looking for, little one." Ellie tilted her head. "You listened," she said simply. "That's what dads do." Outside, the storm howled. Inside, something broke open in the cowboy's chest, slow and painful and warm. He took off his gloves and wrapped his coat around Ellie's shoulders. "It's cold," he said. "You shouldn't be shivering like this." She beamed up at him, eyes shining. That night, as the storm trapped them all together, the cowboy told Ellie stories by the fire, stories he'd never told anyone. And for the first time in years, the silence didn't feel so heavy. Morning came soft and pale, sunlight glinting off endless white. Ellie slept curled against the cowboy's side, her small hand fisted in his shirt like she was afraid he might disappear. He didn't move. He didn't breathe too loud. He just watched her, heart pounding with a fear he hadn't felt in years, the fear of caring. The station master approached quietly. "Road'll open by noon," he said. "Social services'll come for her." The words felt like a death sentence. Ellie woke slowly and looked up at the cowboy. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked. He shook his head quickly. "No, sweetheart." She smiled, then grew serious. "I know Christmas wishes don't always come true," she said. "But thank you for pretending with me." Something inside him snapped then. He stood, walked to the window, stared out at the snow-covered plains where he'd spent his life running from ghosts. He thought of empty houses, quiet nights, meals eaten alone. He turned back, knelt in front of Ellie, and said the words that changed everything. "I can't promise I'll be perfect," he said. "But if you still want, I could try to be your dad." Ellie didn't speak. She threw her arms around his neck and held on like she'd been waiting her whole life for that moment. When the social worker arrived, papers were signed, hands were shaken, and a miracle quietly took shape. Weeks later, Christmas morning came. A small tree stood in the cowboy's cabin, crooked but proud. Ellie ran toward it laughing, the sound filling every corner of the once silent home. She stopped, turned, and hugged him tight. "I got my wish," she said. The cowboy blinked hard, voice thick. "So did I. And if this story touched your heart, if you believe that love can still find us, even in our coldest winters, subscribe to the channel. More stories like this are waiting for you. Stories of hope, family, and miracles that feel real. Stay with us. The best stories are yet to come. The first weeks after Christmas were the hardest. The snow didn't melt, and neither did the doubts that crept into the cowboy's mind when the cabin fell quiet at night. Ellie slept in the small room beside his, her soft breathing drifting through the thin walls, and every sound made him wake in a panic, afraid she might be gone the way everyone else had been taken from him. He had never been responsible for anyone before, not really. Feeding horses was simple, fixing fences was honest work. Raising a child was terrifying. Ellie followed him everywhere, her questions endless, her curiosity bright as winter sun on fresh snow. She wanted to know why the stars looked sharper out here, why he never talked about his past, why some people left and others stayed. He answered what he could and stayed quiet when he couldn't, but Ellie never pushed. She had already learned what silence meant. One afternoon, while he was repairing a broken gate, Ellie wandered too close to the corral and slipped on the ice, scraping her knee. She didn't cry right away, just stared at the blood, stunned. The cowboy was at her side in seconds, heart pounding, lifting her as if she weighed nothing. His hands shook as he cleaned the wound, panic rising like a storm. "It's okay," Ellie whispered, touching his rough cheek. "I'm still here." The words broke something open in him. That night by the fire, Ellie asked him why he never smiled in old photographs she'd found tucked in a drawer. He stared into the flames for a long time before telling her about the family he lost, about the river, about the promise he'd made to never love again, because loving meant losing. Ellie listened quietly, then climbed into his lap and wrapped her arms around him. "You didn't break your promise," she said. "You just made a new one." Outside, the wind howled, but inside the cabin, the silence was no longer empty. It was full of healing, slow and unsure, but real. Spring came late that year, creeping in cautiously as if it didn't want to disturb the fragile peace that had settled over the land. The snow receded inch by inch, revealing brown earth and stubborn grass. Ellie watched it all from the porch, counting birds, naming clouds, waiting for the world to fully wake up. The cowboy found work closer to town so Ellie could attend school, and on her first day, she held his hand tighter than the winter had ever held the plains. He stood there long after she disappeared through the school doors, afraid that letting go, even for a few hours, might undo everything. Ellie came home that afternoon glowing, talking about spelling words and friends and a teacher who smelled like peppermint. Life grew busier, louder, brighter, but not everyone approved. Whispers followed them in town. People wondered how a silent, broken cowboy could raise a child. One afternoon, a man from the county arrived, questions sharp and cold. The cowboy answered honestly, voice steady, hands clenched. Ellie stood between them, chin lifted. "He's my dad," she said. "He chose me." The man left, and the cowboy sank into a chair, exhausted. Ellie brought him a glass of water the way she'd seen him do when horses were tired. "You're doing good," she said. That summer, laughter replaced echoes in the cabin. Ellie learned to ride, falling and climbing back up, fearless. The cowboy learned to laugh again, the sound unfamiliar but welcome. On the anniversary of the night they met, they returned to the Old Way station. Ellie held his hand and smiled. "This is where my life started," she said. He looked down at her, eyes wet, and realized the truth. It wasn't just her life that had begun there. It was his too.